My name is Alice Reed. It was a Wednesday when my old life ended and my new one began. The sun was melting behind the jagged silhouettes of the pine trees that framed our porch, painting the sky in strokes of orange and bruised purple. I remember the specific ache in my lower back as I stepped out of my car, a phantom pain from a 12-hour shift at the hospital. I was exhausted, but it was a good kind of tired, the kind that comes from purpose. A proud exhaustion. Just the night before, that exhaustion had been rewarded. My mom had cried in my arms, her sobs muffled against my shoulder, telling me I had saved the family. My dad, a man whose physical affection was so rare it felt like a myth from my childhood, had wrapped me in a hug so tight it stole my breath. "You're our hero, Alice," he'd whispered, his voice thick with an emotion I mistook for gratitude. I believed them. After a lifetime of feeling invisible, of being the responsible, reliable, but overlooked daughter, I finally mattered. The feeling was so intoxicating that a smile was still stuck to my face from the memory as I walked toward the front door, but the smile faltered, then vanished. Something was wrong. The air was too still. The familiar lace curtains, Mom always kept in the front windows, were gone, leaving two dark, vacant eyes staring back at me. The driveway, usually cluttered with my dad's truck and my brother's latest temporary vehicle, was starkly empty. I looked over at the flower beds, the ones my mom used to fuss over for hours, complaining about weeds while secretly loving the dirt under her nails. They were torn up, trampled into muddy ruin. A cold dread, heavy and metallic, began to pool in my stomach. I rushed to the front door, my heart hammering against my ribs. My key slid into the lock, turned, and the door swung open into a cavern of silence. The house was gutted. Every piece of furniture, every rug, every painting, every memory had been ripped out. The only thing left was the echo of my life. And there, in the center of the vast, empty hardwood floor, sat a single white envelope. My name, Alice, was scribbled across it in my dad's rushed, barely legible pen. My hands trembled as I picked it up. The paper was cheap, thin, inside a single folded sheet. The note was short, a dagger twisted with brutal efficiency. "Thanks for fixing our credit, loser. If we move to Florida with your brother, don't call no signature, no remorse. Just that." Loser, I dropped the envelope as if it had burned my fingertips. My legs gave out and I sank onto the floor. The cold would a shock against my skin. For a long moment, I couldn't breathe, couldn't think. Then, like an automaton, I dragged myself up and stumbled out onto the front lawn, a ghost in my own front yard. Neighbors drove by, raising a hand in a casual wave, their faces etched with the bland pleasantries of a normal Wednesday afternoon. They had no idea they were waving at a crime scene, at the wreckage of a woman's belief in her own blood. I wanted to scream until my throat was raw. I wanted to burn something down, to watch the flames consume everything, just to feel a heat that matched the inferno raging inside me. But then a strange and terrible calm washed over the fire. I sat there, silent, letting the devastation sink into my bones. And then I smiled. A real smile. A sharp, cold, calculating smile. Because my parents, in their haste and their arrogance, didn't know one small critical thing. When I paid off the last dime of their $280,000 debt last week, I did more than just hand over checks. I had the deed transferred quietly into my name. Every document was signed, notarized, and filed with the county. The sale they thought they'd just pulled off wasn't valid. And in the next 24 hours, they were about to receive a masterclass in what it means to betray the wrong daughter. Let's just say they would come to regret every single dollar I ever gave them. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just sat there on the grass, watching the sunset spill over my knees like blood, the cruel letter crumpled into a tight ball in my fist. They really did it. They used me like a checkbook and then tossed me aside like junk mail. But what they didn't know is that while they were busy scheming, I was, For the first time in my life, paying attention. I'd stopped trusting their words and started reading the fine print. This all started 6 months ago. I was sleeping in my car, the driver's seat reclined as far as it would go, a hospital blanket pulled up to my chin. After my ex kicked me out, I'd been staying with a friend, but the weight of being a burden had become too much to bear. It was past midnight when my phone buzzed, illuminating the cramped space with a picture of my mom. I answered, and her voice came through, shredded by sobs. "Alice, oh Alice, we're going to lose the house," she cried. "Your father, he made some bad investments. We're $280,000 in the hole. The bank is going to foreclose that house." It wasn't. Just wood and nails to me. Was my only anchor in a life that had felt adrift for so long. It was the porch where I celebrated my 5th birthday. The wooden stairs I used to sneak down on Christmas morning. The window I'd stare out of, dreaming of a different life. Losing it felt like losing a limb. "What about the money you inherited?" "From Grandpa," I asked, my voice flat. I already knew the answer. "Oh, sweetie," Mom sniffled. "The performance flawless. We used it to help your brother start his business. You know how hard it's been on him?" "Of course. Nathan, the golden child. He could crash every car, ruin every job, cheat on every girlfriend. And somehow he was always the one who needed protecting. The one who deserved another chance paid for by someone else's sacrifice. Still, the thought of seeing a foreclosure sign hammered into that lawn, the home of my memories auctioned off to strangers. I couldn't bear it, so I did what the good daughter always does. I drained my savings account, every penny I'd worked. Double shifts to put away. I maxed out my credit cards. I took out a high-interest personal loan that felt like a yoke around my neck. When I walked back into that house with a manila folder thick with cashier's checks, they were stunned into silence. Dad, who usually just grunted in my direction, couldn't speak. Mom dropped to her knees, clutching my hands. "You're an angel, Alice. Our guardian angel," she whispered. "They made me dinner. They took pictures, posting them on social media with captions about their wonderful, selfless daughter. For one night, I was a war hero. And me? I was just so pathetically happy to finally be seen." That's the part that really stings. It wasn't just the money. I was robbed of the illusion that they loved me, the fragile hope that my worth wasn't conditional. But now, standing in front of my empty, stolen house, that illusion was dead. And I was done being their safety net. Because while they were packing their bags for Florida, whispering about their clever escape, I was at the title office, finalizing the transfer. They were so blinded by their own greed they didn't even read the papers I'd asked them to sign, telling them they were just some final forms for the refinancing. Now, as I stood on my lawn, the only thing I felt was a surge of cold, electrifying power. They thought they took everything from me. What they really did was give me permission to burn the bridge and the whole damn village down. The next morning, I drove to the county title office, wore a black hoodie, the hood pulled up, and a pair of dark sunglasses. It wasn't because I was ashamed. It was because I was a predator now, and I didn't want my prey to see me coming. I wanted the surprise, to land like a bolt of lightning. Miss Reed. The clerk, a kind-faced woman named Joan, smiled as she slid a thick manila folder across the polished counter. "Everything's official. The property at 124 Pine Street is legally yours. The attempted sale your parents initiated is void." Cave. A single sharp nod. On the outside, I was a statue of calm. Inside, I was a wildfire. The buyers, an innocent family from out of state, had already wired the money to my parents' joint account. But the title was never legally in my parents' name to sell, which meant they hadn't just been cruel, okay? They had committed felony fraud. Jail would be a mercy. I didn't want them in jail, not yet. I wanted them cornered, homeless, and utterly humiliated. I wanted them to feel the same powerless desperation they had inflicted on me. I stepped out of the office into a warm, gentle wind. I checked my phone for missed calls from a Florida area code. I smiled and slid the phone back into my pocket. Let them sweat. That evening, I sat in my empty living room, the moonlight striping the bare floors, and made 2 calls. The first was to the local sheriff's office, where I calmly reported an unauthorized, fraudulent attempted sale on a property registered under my name. The second was an email. I attached scanned copies of the deed, the title, and all my documentation and sent it to the buyer's agent. Within 2 hours, the dominoes began to fall. The deal was officially frozen. The moving trucks, already on their way to Florida with my parents' ill-gotten furniture, were turned around. But Mom and Dad were already gone. They thought they were just hours away from sipping margaritas in Boca Raton. Instead, they were about to discover their dream home didn't exist. Their bank account was about to be seized in a legal hold, and their golden boy son, Nathan. Well, Nathan was about to learn just how toxic his own wife could be when she found out her comfortable future had been dragged down with a broke, jobless mama's boy. I waited. I didn't text, didn't call, didn't explain. I just posted one single, cryptic thing to my Facebook page. If you ever feel like you've been used, don't get angry. Get smart, and always, always read the deed. Then I turned off my notifications. Let them wonder. Let them spiral. That night, I sat alone in the silent, empty living room, and for the first time in a long time, I laughed. I wasn't the girl begging to be loved anymore. I was the woman who owned the house. They weren't homeowners. They were trespassers in a world they thought they had built. The first text arrived at 2:17 a.m. It was from my mother. Where are you? Why is the bank saying the house isn't ours? Call me now. Then came the missed calls. 2 from her. 1 from Nathan. 1 from a blocked Florida number. I didn't answer. I just laid in my sleeping bag on the floor, phone face down, and smiled into the darkness. Let them rot in their self-made confusion. By morning, their composure had completely shattered. Nathan finally left a voicemail. His voice a brittle, ugly mix of rage and panic. You need to fix this, Alice. You've ruined everything. Mom's having chest pains. Dad's yelling at everyone. Do you think this is funny? You selfish bee. You've got 1 day before we take legal action. Legal action. On a home I owned. Bought with my money. After being scammed with crocodile tears and empty hugs, I made myself eggs and coffee, playing his frantic message again on speaker, letting the pathetic threats echo through my empty kitchen. Then I composed a single group text and sent it to all 3 of them. Per Florida and federal law, attempting to sell a home you don't legally own is wire fraud, a felony. I have full documentation proving my ownership prior to your attempted sale. The sale is void. The funds are being returned to the buyers. The house is and has been mine. But since you've left so quickly, figured you wouldn't mind that I've already changed the locks. The silence that followed was more satisfying than any screaming match could ever be. 3 hours passed. Then another voicemail. This time it was my mother. She was crying again, but the tone was different. This wasn't the manipulative please save us cry. This was the raw, desperate sound of pride collapsing under its own weight. Sweetie, we made a mistake, she whimpered. We were just trying to start over. We didn't think you'd take it this far. Your dad? He didn't mean what he wrote in the letter. He just panicked. Can we please? Can we just talk? If you don't, talk to someone who stabbed you in the back while you were hugging them. You walk away while they bleed out on their own blade instead of replying. I called the Homeowners Association and reported unauthorized listing activity. I updated the city records to flag the property under dispute, adding another layer of legal armor. This wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about consequences. I was no longer their daughter. I was their reckoning. I knew Nathan would be the first to crack completely. Pressure hits him like a match to dry grass, quick, loud, and utterly useless. He called me a day later from a restricted number. I picked up and said nothing. Alice. His voice was low, broken. Sarah left me. She took the kids. He let out a dry, rattling sniffle. She found the letter Dad wrote you? The one that said, "Thanks for fixing our credit, loser." She called me a parasite. Ha ha. He laughed, a bitter, hollow sound. A parasite, Alice. I let the silence hang in. The air, a heavy blanket. Mom and Dad are sleeping on an air mattress in Uncle David's basement, he continued, his voice cracking. He won't let them stay past next week. They're saying we should come back and try to work things out. They want to move back into the house. That's when I finally spoke, my voice as cold and clear as ice. There is no we. Nathan, you made that perfectly clear the day you watched me drain my life savings for you and didn't so much as say thank you. A pause. Then the inevitable guilt trip. They're your parents, Alice. You're really going to leave them on the street? I smiled, a sharp, painful stretch of my lips. It's funny, that's exactly what they were willing to do to me. The pretense was over. I wasn't their golden goose anymore. I was the hammer. Over the next few days, I began my transformation. The house was a blank canvas. New locks were just the beginning. I hired movers to bring in new furniture, pieces that I chose that held no memories of them. I started repainting the hallway, covering the pencil marks that charted my childhood height on the door trim. Not because I hated the past, but because I was finally done letting it haunt me. Their lawyer called, man with a smooth, condescending voice. He asked if I'd consider an amicable restitution, a family-centered resolution. I asked him one simple question. Did they happen to tell you that 5 years ago, when my lease was up and I needed a place to stay for a month? They told me no. They said Nathan needed his privacy more than I needed a roof over my head. There was a long pause on the other end of the line. No, Miss Reed, he said, his voice suddenly less smooth. They did not mention that. I thought not. I hung up. I didn't need justice from a court. I had something far better. Control, peace. The day my moving truck arrived with my things. For my house I stood in the driveway, barefoot in leggings and a hoodie, sipping an iced coffee like it was a sacred ritual. The neighbors waved and some even came over. Oh, are your parents moving back in? One asked. I smiled, a genuine easy smile. No, just cleaning out the past. It's making space for a future that actually belongs to me. Inside, I went to the hallway. Closet. It was the one place they hadn't emptied, full of things they deemed junk. I found my mom's old wedding album, Nathan's dusty high school sports trophies, and a box of my dad's important documents, unpaid insurance bills and unopened tax forms. I boxed it all up, sealed it with packing tape, and wrote in thick black marker, "Return to sender." I drove it to Uncle David's house. When he opened the door, the smell of stale coffee, unwashed laundry, and quiet desperation slapped me in the face. I could see them over his shoulder. My mother, her hair frizzy and unkempt. My father, his eyes sunken and hollow. And Nathan, slumped on the floor in sweats, scrolling numbly through his phone like a ghost. I didn't step inside. I just set the box on the porch. My dad reached for it, his eyes flickering with something that might have once been hope. Alice, you should have just said thank you, I said, my voice even, instead of treating me like your personal savings account. My mom opened her mouth, but no sound came out. But shh, she looked thinner, not from grief, but from the unfamiliar burden of finally having to carry her own weight. I turned to go, but then Nathan stood up. Alice, wait. What are we supposed to do now? I paused at the edge of the porch, my back to them, and said the most honest thing I've ever said to him in my life. Figure it out, like I always had to. And then I left, my footsteps fading into their stunned, suffocating silence that night. I changed my number. I deleted the family group chat. I blocked all of them on every platform. And for the first time in years, my mind was quiet. No more guilt. No more trying to be the good daughter, the fixer, the forgiver. They taught me love was transactional, so I gave them exactly what they gave me. Nothing. Weeks passed. Silence was the most peace I'd ever known. Spent my mornings in the sunroom reading books I'd once sold to pay their bills. I repotted Mom's old orchids, the ones she always said were too delicate to survive. They bloomed for me. I painted the walls of the guest bedroom ocean blue. I turned Dad's old office, the one I was never allowed to enter as a kid, into a studio for my own business, a space for me. Then one morning, I got an email from Sarah. Not Nathan. Sarah. Subject line, I know everything. And I'm sorry. She told me about the day they arrived in Florida. How my parents treated her like unpaid help. How they expected her to cook, clean, and smile while they spent the leftover money from the sale it never was on cruise brochures and champagne drinks. Then she found the letter, the one that started it all. She confronted Nathan. He blamed me. That's when she decided to walk away. I thought Nathan was a man, she wrote, but he's just your father with a younger face. And you're the only one who ever showed real integrity. I'm sorry I didn't see it sooner. She ended it with, if you ever want to talk, really talk, I'm here. Woman to woman, I didn't reply. Not yet. Not because I was angry, but because I was finally protecting the one person I should have chosen all along. Me. As for Nathan, I heard. He moved into a cheap one-bedroom near Tampa. No wife, no car, no job, just him and his entitlement. Last I heard, he tried to flip NFTs. It flopped. Of course it did. My parents. Uncle David kicked them out after they missed rent for the third time. They're now bouncing between motels, posting blurry Facebook updates, pretending everything's fine. But I know better. Because when you tear down the only child who ever lifted you, eventually the ground disappears beneath you, and the fall. It's quiet. Last week I walked past a homeless man sitting by the fountain. He looked up and for a split second I saw my father. But it wasn't him. Just the same slumped shoulders, the same hollow stare of someone who gambled everything and lost. I kept walking because I didn't owe pity to people who fed off my pain. That night, I lit a candle in the hallway, the one I used to hide in when they fought. I stood there barefoot, grounded in silence, and I finally let myself say it out loud. I did the right thing. Not because they suffered, but because I stopped. Stopped begging to be loved. Stopped paying to belong. Stopped handing out second chances like spare change. They thought they taught me strength through suffering, but I learned my strength in walking away. That house, it's mine now. Every brick, every inch. But it's not about the deed. It's about the peace. No more calls. No more guilt trips wrapped in Bible verses. No more birthday texts from Nathan asking for just a little help till payday. I blocked them all. Digitally, emotionally, eternally, no. Now I plant flowers where they once buried resentment. I host friends who say thank you and mean it. I laugh in the kitchen without hearing a slammed door down the hall. I even started writing again. A memoir, maybe. Not to expose, but to free. To remind myself I am not the sum of what I paid for. Others, I am the worth they never saw. And the home they'll never enter again, because this chapter didn't end in revenge. It ended in reclamation. I didn't destroy them. They destroyed themselves. I just stopped saving them.